Hello there, and welcome to the Abundant Self Podcast, a podcast where we talk about everything there is to learn and to know about what it truly means to have life and life in abundance. My name is Sharon Chabai, and thank you so much for tuning in. Hello once again, and yes, welcome to the Abundant Self Podcast. If this is your very first time here, Karibu Sana. My good name is Sharon Chabai, and this is episode 33 of the podcast, and today we are closing on our three-part series on scarcity versus abundance, and we are going to be talking about how to shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. So yes, Karibu Sana. I hope April is everything you had hoped it would be. I hope you're keeping well and safe wherever it is that you are, and yeah, I hope that you are still on this journey of living life to the full. Like I always like to say, it is my hope and prayer that by the time you're done listening to this episode, that you will have made a decision to become a part of the Abundant Self community. So yes, before we get on to today's episode, allow me to recap episode 32, where we were talking about what an abundance mindset looks like. And like I said, this has been a three-part series where we have been talking about scarcity versus abundance. In part 1, we talked about what a scarcity mindset looks like. And in part 2, we were able to just paint that picture and talk about how an abundance mindset looks like, being a giver, being grateful and content, showing up, how an abundance mindset looks like preparation, it looks like faith, it looks like patience and perseverance, how it looks like just learning from your mistakes and collaborating, not for your sake, but for the sake of those that you serve. And today we are now putting an end to that series with part 3, where we are going to be talking about how to shift from a scarcity mindset and to embrace an abundance mindset. So if you're yet to listen to those 2 episodes, like I always like to say, you can either press pause, go back and listen to them, or you can listen to this episode up until the very end, and then once you're done, go back and listen to them. But I think because this has been a 3-part series, it would be best if you started with part 1 and part 2, and then it will be easier to now see how to then shift from a scarcity mindset and onto an abundance mindset. But yeah, I think just generally the whole thing of shifting from scarcity to abundance is, I think even just before we get on to how to do that, is just acknowledging that it can be difficult to just any mindset shift generally can be difficult because, especially, for example, let's talk about scarcity mindset and recap on how we said that, a scarcity mindset usually would have stemmed from maybe your upbringing. Maybe you are brought up in a scarcity environment or in a place of lack, or with parents operating from a scarcity mindset. So automatically you find yourself operating yourself from a scarcity mindset as well, and you carry that on to your life, to your adulthood, even to how you raise your children, how you bring up your family. So wanting to change that mindset, and especially if it is something that has been ingrained in you since time immemorial, and especially if it began from your formative years, from that time in your life when you're still young, when you're still a child, when there was so much potential for you to be impacted with the right mindset, coming to that point where you can actually change that mindset and essentially just be better and embrace a new mindset can be so difficult. It can be difficult, and especially when this mindset has become a part of us. But if we are to live full and abundant lives, I think this is something that we keep on saying here on the podcast. If we are to live full and abundant lives, that shift needs to happen. Like if you're to live a full life, if you're to live an abundant life, where we're confidently saying that I am living the life that I have been called to live, then it is important that it doesn't matter how deeply ingrained those mindsets are. It doesn't matter how difficult it is going to be to actually shift those mindsets. It is actually necessary. And keeping in mind, that verse that says that new wine cannot be put in old wine skins. And that is essentially to mean that we cannot desire to live new and renewed lives or meaningful lives if we are still operating in our old ways of thinking and of living. Yeah. If you want to live better lives, if you want to live a fuller life, a more fulfilled life, then it is important for us to change even our ways of looking at the world, our ways of thinking. So it doesn't matter how difficult it might be, that shift is necessary. And on today's episode, we are going to be talking about how does one make that shift? How does one shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset? And again, I think I even mentioned this caveat in episode 32 where I was talking about, I know there's a lot of what the world says an abundance mindset is, but most of what we are talking about in this 3-part series is in relation to living a full and abundant life. None of that positive thinking, none of that motivational speaking, none of that universe kind of thing. No, we are not doing that here on the podcast. We are speaking from a place of what does it mean when God says that He has come that we may have life and have it in full? What are some of the things that are hindering us from living a full life? And now that we know what they are, when we talked about what a scarcity mindset looks like, and now that we know where we need to be in terms of how an abundance mindset looks like, how then do we now make that step? How then do we walk in that space of looking at life from a lens or from a point of view of abundance? And then now how do we make that shift altogether? So that is essentially the context through which we are going to be having today's discussion. And that brings me to point number 1 of, in order to shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, it is very important that we embrace forgiveness and healing. And this is a very weighty subject in itself. In fact, I have been thinking of just doing an episode on healing, and especially because if you listened to a very first episode of the year, I mentioned that this year I am focusing on healing. And, healing requires a lot of things, one of them including forgiveness. So if we are to shift from a scarcity mindset, it is important for us to be ready to first of all, embrace forgiveness, understand that there is a place of restoration, there is a place of renewal. That yes, this is how you have been living your life, this is how you have been operating, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, that all hope is lost. So embracing forgiveness, that, forgiveness is available to you, that you have been forgiven. Even just embracing forgiveness of you as you forgiving yourself as an individual, forgiving yourself from for the moments or for the times when you made certain decisions out of a scarcity mindset, or rather for the many times that you knew better but chose not to do better. So just embracing forgiveness, embracing healing, embracing restoration, embracing renewal, because it is important then for us to, after we have had that sort of, yes, this is where I was, and now that the truth has been made available to me, how do I then walk in this truth? And one of those ways is forgiveness. Embracing forgiveness, forgiving yourself, even forgiving those that may have hurt you, and just being ready to start from a new slate, just having a fresh start altogether, and knowing that moving forward, of course, there are going to be moments when you're going to slip back, because again, if the mindset you have been operating from is something that has been deeply ingrained in you, sometimes it's not possible for that change to happen overnight. I know maybe for some people, maybe by divine intervention, it might so happen that the change, happens by the snap of a finger or just happens overnight. It is possible. But for other people, it might not be possible. And that process is necessary in strengthening our faith, in strengthening our new mindset, in strengthening even how we go ahead to encourage other people to make that mindset shift. Yeah. So the first thing I think would be just embracing forgiveness, embracing healing, embracing the concept of restoration, that restoration is possible, renewal is possible. There is a place of starting afresh. There is a place of starting anew and just giving yourself grace in that moment, so that in moments when you feel like you have stepped back or you have slipped, just showing yourself grace and being able to just come back to that point of, yes, I slipped, but I know the right way and I will strive to walk in it and to also encourage others to walk in it as well. And then the other thing is walking in obedience. And I think I'll just tie it to forgiveness and healing, and walking in obedience in the sense that, now that you know that this is the path to walk, or this is the path that you need to take, just walking in obedience, like it's when a child maybe was caught eating sugar and the parent reprimanded them and said, you're not supposed to be eating sugar. After they have, learned from their mistakes, or after maybe they have faced the consequences of whatever it is that they were doing, now that they know the right path, or now that they know the right thing to do, it's now to walk in that obedience. Yeah. Knowing that an abundance mindset will look like, being grateful. An abundance mindset will look like learning from my mistake. An abundance mindset will look like showing up. So even in moments when you don't feel like showing up, you show up. That is walking in obedience. Obedience is not dependent on how you feel. Is not dependent on your mood. Obedience is doing the right thing, not because you feel like doing the right thing, but because you are required to do the right thing. And I think we even talked about this in the episode where we talked about obedience and how that is related to living a full and abundant life. Because if you're to live full lives, it's to understand that, our emotions, how we feel, or, what we desire, they really do not have a say in it. What matters is the truth. What matters is the call to which, or rather the path, the purpose to which we have been called. So just walking in it and just living life to the absolute full, and just always having the end goal in mind, so to speak, knowing that this is where I'm going, and in order for me to get there, in order for me to live a full life, this is what I need to do. So whether I like it or not, I'm gonna do it. So how to make that mindset shift is just to walk in obedience. And I was talking about this with one of my friends the other day, where we're talking about how, it's this showing up for those little things. Sometimes, you don't really have to, it doesn't even have to be obedience in those big things, but in those small things, in those things that maybe people do not notice, or in those things that only you need to be obedient in, so to speak. So when you honor yourself, when you honor your purpose, when you honor the truth in that aspect, then it becomes easy for you to live a life that is full. It becomes easy for you to make that shift in your mindset, so to speak. Another way in which you can make the shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, I think, is learning how to set boundaries. and just learning how to guard that which is important to you. I think when you have an abundance mindset, it's knowing that it's not really about being wasteful of either the resources that you have or just being wasteful of the time that you have. Because in as much as, yes, abundance is all about having enough, the reason we have enough is because we have learned how to set boundaries, how to guard our time, how to guard the resources that we have, or rather how to honor the resources that we have, how to honor the time that we have, how to honor the spaces that we allow ourselves to operate in. Just setting boundaries, learning to say no. Saying no, not because of your own selfish ambitions, but saying no because you know what it is that you are doing. What it is you're pursuing is more important than what the world might expect of you to do. Whereas maybe the world might expect you to be wasteful or to be extravagant, so to speak. Having an abundance mindset, living life to the full, is understanding that what you have does not only belong to you. Actually, what you have does not belong to you, but you are simply a steward of what you have, be it your time, be it your talents, be it the opportunities and the resources that you have. Whatever it is that has been given unto you, you are a steward, and you have been called to honor it, to multiply it, not to be wasteful, not to be extravagant, but just to honor it and multiply it and see to it that it, has a ripple effect and that it goes ahead to change and improve the lives of other people. And one of the ways in which you can do that is just learning to set boundaries, learning to stand your ground, learning to be a person who says what they say and actually mean what it is, who says what they say they will do, keeping your word, and being a person who walks the talk, being a person who can be trusted, so to speak. So that is one of the ways in which you can shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. Another way is just being mindful of the things that we feed our minds. More often than not, our mindsets are usually as a result of the things that we feed our minds, be it the people that we speak to or the conversations that we have, the things that we watch, the things that we listen to, whatever it is we consume in as far as information, or even maybe just it could be in an entertainment sort of form. It could be just for the purposes of entertainment, but more often than not, we find that our mindsets or who we are as a result of the things that we feed our minds. And most often we feed our minds through the conversations that we have, the things we listen to, the things we watch, the books that we read. There's a lot of things that we consume that are not really nourishing our minds, but are just poisoning us altogether. And now that is seen in our mindset. I don't know if you guys have seen or just have interacted with people and you just listen to them. You just listen to how they reason, and you could either be inspired, and not maybe they're inspired in being misled, so to speak, but it actually causes you to sit down and to really think about your life in a good and positive way. And then there's those who you just listen to and you're like, who have you been talking to? Like, what have you been listening to? Who has been planting these ideas in your mind? Because our mindsets, more often than not, are as a result of the things we consume. Be it media, be it beliefs. Sometimes it could even be the churches that we go to. Sometimes you go to a church and the doctrine that is being fed to you is one that is not even leading you to the path that God wants you to take. And so you find yourself just living a life that is just full of wayward mindset. Whether it is a scarcity mindset, whatever mindset it is, so long as it's not healthy, so long as it's not for the betterment of the people who you have been called to serve, or so long as it's not helping you to actually pursue the purpose for which God has given you, then no. So always be mindful of what you feed your mind, whether it's the conversations you're having. And I mean, there's even this verse that says, whatever is true, whatever is pure, whatever is noble, whatever is just, think on these things, talk about these things. Let not your conversations just be meaningless. Let the conversations you have, be filled with truth, be filled with, everything that is pure, everything that is noble, everything that is praiseworthy. Talk about those things, think on those things, and that will, of course, have a huge impact on your mindset, in your way of thinking. And that is one of the ways in which you can shift that mindset. And maybe it could even mean just uprooting yourself from a certain environment. Sometimes you find that maybe a certain environment is what is, contributing to the scarcity mindset that you have. What would happen if you just uprooted yourself from it all? Whether it is the place you live, the place you work, whatever it is, or wherever it is, what would happen if you just left that environment and went to an environment that is more helpful, or that contributes more to you having an abundance mindset? That is one of the ways you can make that shift. And then the other way in which you can shift, I think we talked about it in the previous 2 episodes, is embracing gratitude and contentment. Just learning to be grateful, learning to be content, and not content. There's this, there's toxic gratitude and toxic contentment, where you are just content because you don't want to do anything about whatever situation you're in. But the contentment and the gratitude we're talking about here is when we're saying counting your blessings one by one, looking at the ways in which God has blessed you, looking at the opportunities that have been given to you that maybe you never had before, being grateful for those things and honoring them enough to multiply them so that other people can also experience the same thing. Another way you can make that mindset shift is just genuinely learning to celebrate other people's wins. And I think it becomes even more impactful when you learn to celebrate people's wins, keeping in mind that your time is coming, and especially those wins that, maybe it's something that you desire, that you are yet to attain. I think when you learn to celebrate someone, for example, I remember when we were talking about scarcity mindset, we talked about how, how marriage, for example, has been idolized, and how today, everyone is always talking about marriage. Like, you just meet someone and they'll just ask you, oh, are you married yet? Or do you have a child yet? Do you have a family yet? I mean, it's something that has been idolized, and not that it's a bad thing. It's actually a blessing, It's actually a blessing to be married, to have a family. But when it is something that you desire, when it's something that you have prayed about and you're like, yeah, God, I also desire to get married, I also desire to have children. When you see the same happening to other people, just because it hasn't happened to you yet doesn't mean that it won't, or doesn't mean that you need to be jealous and be envious of the other person. But having an abundance mindset is learning to celebrate other people's wins, especially when those wins are a reflection of some of the desires that you have as an individual. So learn to genuinely celebrate other people's wins, knowing that your time is coming, knowing that just because it hasn't happened to you, or just because you have not celebrated that win yet, doesn't mean you won't celebrate it altogether. And this reminds me of the episode I was talking about, quarter life crisis, where I was talking about, when I was, I think, turning 22. Yeah, I think 22. or 21, there's certain things I had written down, of some of the things I had wanted to achieve when I was turning 25. And when I turned 25 last year, I remember I went back and I looked at those things and I was like, wow, I think I've only achieved one thing in this list. And of course, a scarcity mindset would have me focus on the things I have not yet achieved, forgetting that there are so many things on that list that one, or rather there are so many things that were not on that list that I had actually achieved that I never thought I would have. And one of them was starting a podcast. Starting a podcast was not something I had planned for when I was 21. But at 25, I was already a podcaster, right? And that is a huge win. That is something that I am always so grateful for, something that I always celebrate up until this moment. So just because something hasn't happened, or just because you haven't celebrated that win, doesn't mean you won't. And even if you won't celebrate that exact win, there is more that life has to offer. There is more blessings that will come to you in whatever way, shape, or form that you need to, just learn to be grateful for, so that even when you're celebrating other people, you know that there is also what is meant for you, so to speak. I don't know if it is right to say that, but like there's that which God has promised you, there's that which God intends for you, and when the time is right, He will make it happen. Yeah. Then the other way to make that shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset is just embracing the art of surrender, the art of letting it go, the art of just understanding that you are not missing out on anything. You are right where you need to be. And if not, just ask God to restore you to His intended path. And I remember this is something I thought about, or rather it just came to me some time ago when I was finding it so hard to let go of something. And I remember just God telling me, why do you feel like you need to hold on to this thing as if you're going to miss out on something? If something is not for you, you are not going to miss out on anything. And as human beings, we usually just have that fear of missing out. It could be a relationship, it could be a job, it could be an opportunity, whatever it is. More often than not, we want to hold on to things because we feel that if we let them go, we risk missing out on maybe love, we risk missing out on happiness, we risk missing out on fulfillment. But who said that those things you're holding on to are actually going to give you joy, love, fulfillment, whatever it is you're hoping to get from them? Who said? So when you embrace the art of surrender, when you embrace the art of letting go, it's understanding that you're not missing out on anything. You're not. If you haven't gotten that job yet, you're not missing out on anything. It just means there's something else that God has maybe intended for you. And whatever it is you had hoped to get out from this opportunity, from this job, you will get that and more in another job or in another opportunity. Understanding that you are right where you need to be. And like I said, if not, then just praying and asking God to just restore you to the path or to the place where you need to be. Just letting it go, letting go. Remember when you talked about scarcity, we talked about the concept of hoarding, always wanting to hold on to things. And they could be material things, they could be whatever, they could be non-material things, whatever it is you're holding on to. Just practice the art of surrender, just letting it go. And the thing with surrender is that it calls you to trust, it calls you to have faith, it calls you to be patient and just working on your goals, working on your dreams, working out your faith, even as you wait for that which God is going to bring to your life or bless you with, whatever it is you might want to call it. And then, of course, I think we had even mentioned this in our previous episode, if you are to shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, then you need to be able to look at failure as an opportunity to learn and to grow. Because I think a lot in life, we find ourselves in situations where when we fail, we feel like that is the end. We feel like, hey, manze, there's no moving on from this. What will people say about me? Like, at this I have failed, and then this is me trying again. What are people going to say? But when you have an abundance mindset, you look at failure as a learning curve, as an opportunity for you to grow. And it's not really about doing something over and over again, expecting the same results. It's about, yes, I have failed. Why did I fail? Where did I miss the mark? Where did I miss a step? So what if I did better in this next round? What if, as I'm trying again, I actually implement the lessons that I have learned from my previous mistakes, from my previous failures? Then you are going to see different results. Then you're going to see growth, and then you're going to see progress. And progress is, living a full life actually entails growth, entails progress. It entails always learning, being a lifelong learner. And finally, just remembering what Isaiah 43 says, that forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? When you're operating from a scarcity mindset, I think we mentioned it even in the previous episode, where we're saying most of the time you'd find that you'd want to dwell on those moments when you did not succeed, on those moments when you failed, on those moments when things didn't work out. But even God says, forget all those things, It's okay, you can. I think when we're talking about just how ready are you for 2024, we talked about how it is important for you to, yes, look at the past and see, what did I do better? What did I not do well? And how can I then use those moments to better prepare me for what is coming ahead? So our past is there not for us to dwell on it, but for us to use it as a learning moment or a learning opportunity to prepare us better for what is coming ahead. So do not dwell on the past, because God is doing a new thing in your life. God is doing a new thing in whatever situation you're in. You just need to work out your faith. You just need to keep showing up. You just need to keep being grateful, even as you go praying and asking God to show up for you in whatever way you want Him to. It's just still going to Him again, presenting those needs to Him with thanksgiving, And then when the time is right, He will make it happen for you. For sure, He will make it happen for you. Yeah, so that's just about it for today's episode. I wanted to keep it short and sweet, which I hope I have. So again, this has been part of a 3-part series on scarcity versus abundance. If you haven't listened to those 2 episodes, then please do go ahead and listen to part 1. That was episode 31, where we were talking about how a scarcity mindset looks like. Then we went to episode 32, where we were talking about how an abundance mindset looks like. And on today's episode, we have been talking about how to then make that shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. And I hope that this series has been impactful to you. Please do feel free to share it with your friends and family. Anyone needs to hear this and needs to have this understanding as well. Feel free to share this episode with them. And of course, let me know what you think. Feel free to reach out to us on our social media platforms. We are on Facebook and Instagram and on X. And you can also join our WhatsApp channel. I have left a link to all that in our show notes. And yes, feel free to also rate, follow, and subscribe to our podcast on anywhere you get your podcast. The Abundance Health Podcast is currently available on all podcast streaming platforms, including YouTube. And if you love the work that we do here, if you find what we do here on the podcast being valuable, then feel free to support us using our till number, which is also on the show notes, and by also purchasing our merchandise by placing your order through our WhatsApp number, which is in the show notes. So yeah, I think that's just about it for today's episode. Then I think the next time we'll be seeing or listening to each other is in May. So I hope the month of April ends well for you, and I hope everything that you wish, pray, and dream comes to pass in accordance to God's will. Yeah. If you remember nothing else from today's episode, like I always like to say, I hope you remember that you have been called to have life and life in abundance, and that I am rooting for you always. Bye-bye.